Good morning, guys. Welcome back to the Financial Minute. As always, thank you for joining me on this beautiful, rainy morning. At least where I am. Hopefully it's not raining where you are, or maybe you like the rain. Anyways, let's get into it. Stocks are trending down. They were down on average about 2.5% yesterday. And today they look like they're trending down as well before the market opens here in the U.S. Bitcoin's right around 45,000, and the VIX is trending up a point. So there's your market update for this morning. I'm gonna try and get this video out sooner than later. At least this way these updates are actually useful. But yeah, how are y'all doing this morning? Spring is here. Spring is sprung, at least here in the U.S. If you're somewhere else in the world, then it might not be the case. But today I want to talk about a little bit about the housing market. Somebody mentioned the other day that they were looking at buying a house, and I was kind of encouraging them to really, make sure that this was the right decision. If you need a house and you don't have a place to live, then you got to buy a house. The question is where and for how much. This is going to depend on where in the country you live. Some parts of the country are much more overpriced than others. I think most parts of the country, the general theme, actually for the world for that matter, is commodities are overpriced right now, including real estate. Some would say especially real estate. So that doesn't mean you can't buy a house right now. That doesn't even mean you can't get a decent deal on a house. In my thoughts, though, you have to be willing to think outside the box and buy something maybe that needs some work. And you're still going to pay, premium for the current times, but at least you won't be in over your ears in value. So in 5 years, the house won't be worth less than you paid for it. That's the goal anyways. But you might be in an area where there really are no fixer-uppers available or unique locations. So you gotta decide, am I gonna spend, we'll just say 130% of the value of this house because I need a place to live and it's cheaper than rent? Because, this is a real conundrum for a lot of people right now. Especially the younger generation. They're just coming out and they want a house, but, they see the previous generation all had bought houses and they're doing well. If you bought a house 10 years ago, you're doing quite, you have some equity in it for sure. At least you should. Assuming you haven't borrowed against it too much. There's these young couples, they want to buy a house, and there's just nothing out there, in a lot of parts of the country. In a lot of parts, I don't think that's right. There's nothing out there there's many areas of the country where there's just not much on the housing market, and what is there is overpriced and sells quick. So, for those first people, those people starting out, they don't generally have a huge budget. So they're stuck fighting over the few houses in that, price range. Some areas are worse than others. I would say some areas are downright impossible to find a house in the start out price range, whatever that might be. Of course, that's going to vary from region to region, but I would say that that's downright impossible in some areas. Those areas you're going to either A, spend way too much money, more than you can afford. The banks haven't clamped down too much yet, so you can get into houses for low down payments, and they're still fairly generous on the debt to equity ratio, so you can still get into some pretty deep debt. And I worry for people doing that because we're in kind of uncharted territory. We don't know what's going to happen. Do you ever really know? But this has never really happened before. You have an epidemic and then a war and massive inflation, starting with the epidemic, because people were not working, and then they were given money, so they had money to buy stuff, and then there was nobody working to make that stuff. Is basically what happened, causing inflation. And now we have a war causing a run for commodities, even more so. So they just opened up the oil reserve to bring down oil prices a little bit, but I imagine that's going to be temporary. So fill up your gas tank while prices are down, because I suspect they're going to go back up again. Of course, remember, this is just my opinion, so not necessarily true, just my thoughts. And I'm rambling. Back to the house. I'm getting distracted. You know, people are first-time home buyers, or even, you know, second-time home buyers or, you know, people who have been renting for a long time want to buy a house. You know, you got to think long-term. So if this house you're buying, you really got to think it through. This is where you're going to be living for a long time, potentially a very long time. Because, you know, if you pay top dollar for a house, values may not recover back to those values for another decade. So you want to make sure you can, A, afford that payment for a decade. Of course, you can't predict the future, but you want to the best of your ability, make sure that you're going to be able to make that payment. And B, make sure you're going to want to stay at that house that long. So if you're looking at a house that's in the country and you live in the city, you got to think this through, because you're going to be stuck in the country for a while potentially. So maybe you like the convenience of living in the city, but you at this moment want some privacy. You know, this is going to be a long-term choice, so you got to think it through. Am I going to be okay with living in the country for up to a decade? You know, if I'm buying this house out in the country for top dollar, because it's going to take, even if values may not come back even within a decade, but at least within a decade you will have paid down the mortgage enough that you'll have some, you know, equity in the house, in theory. Now, like I said, a lot of this is in theory, because we just don't know. But in theory, in a decade, you should have equity, even if houses fall and don't recover even to where they are now. Within a decade, you should still have some equity within a year, within 10 years. So you want to think, I would think on a 10-year basis. So if you're buying a house right now, plan on being there for at least 10 years. Or maybe you just have money and it's not the end of the world if the house loses value. In which case, this video isn't for you. You know, if you got the money and you can afford to lose money, then go ahead, do whatever you want. But if you know, if you're like most Americans, most people in the world for that matter, you know, you can't afford to lose $50,000-$60,000 on a house purchase. So think it through long and hard before you buy one in today's market. Because some people say the market's just going to keep going up. And, you know, there's a chance for that, for sure. And, you know, getting in now, if that is the case, getting in now, in theory, would be the right decision. Especially if you want to buy a house. But, you know, there's also a chance, like I said, that prices come down. So make sure that you are thinking this through. And with having said that, you know, go buy that house now, or don't buy that house. Think it through. Rent for a little longer. Some people are not able to rent because a lot of landlords are now selling their houses because, you know, the cash they can get out of these houses is tremendous, and so that's why they're selling them. So maybe you're about to lose your rental property for that reason. The landlord wants to sell the property. Of course, you could work a deal out with your landlord. Maybe you buy the property. It's a win-win. He might give you a better price than he would give someone else because he doesn't have to deal with marketing it and getting it ready for market. You know the house, you know its quirks and highlights. So that's an option. You gotta think outside the box. Maybe you like the house and the landlord wants to sell it. Well, buy it. Approach the landlord and say, hey, let's work a deal out. You know, you don't have to worry about getting me out of the house. I want a house anyways. Let's make a deal. Maybe you don't qualify for a loan at this time. Maybe the landlord will work out 5-year, he might finance it for you for 5 years. Of course, be careful. Make sure you read the contract. That gives you 5 years to get your finances together. You lock in a price. Yeah, you're paying down, putting a little bit of money every month towards the purchase of that house while paying the rent. So the payment's going to go up. But here's the thing. If you do that, and for some reason in 5 years, you don't want to live in that house anymore, or the market tanks and you can go out and get a better deal, well, in some ways that's a win-win, because the landlord, he's not going to do that unless you put a pretty good sized down payment. So you will lose that down payment. But if house prices came way down for some reason, you might be willing to lose that down payment. So these are things to think about. It's an idea, if you're looking to buy a house and you rent a house currently, maybe a good idea to approach your landlord and say, hey, I want to buy the house. Maybe he doesn't even want to sell the house, but maybe you want to buy it. And you want to work out a 5-year deal where you'll put a down payment now and you'll keep making payments. On a lease to own type deal. Again, you got to be careful with these contracts, because you want to read the fine print, make sure you go through it line for line. But it can be a win-win. Yeah, you might lose your down payment, but maybe you don't want to buy that house in 5 years. It gives you options, and it gives the landlord options too. He's going to get to keep that down payment, plus he's getting rent, and he'll still have the house at the end if you decide you don't want it, so he can rent it out again. So it's a win-win in my eyes. Of course, I am a landlord, so I'm looking at this from both angles, because the landlord's not going to do a one-sided deal. I'm sorry, he just won't, especially in today's market where he knows he can get top dollar for that house. So you gotta think from both angles, but there's ways to work out a deal so both angles are happy. It's not going to be an ideal deal probably for the tenant, especially because the market's hot. So, but it could be a good deal in the aspect that it gives you flexibility to have a house in 5 years, or not have a house if the market tanks. So, yeah, think about that. Another thing to think about is maybe you can't find a house in the area you're looking for the budget you have. Start looking at abandoned properties or properties that are just off the market. Look for houses that look empty. Go online, look up who owns the house. It's easy to do. Go to most counties have a county site where you can find out who to contact, who is the owner of the house. Of course, you can always call your county office and find the information that way. They might charge you for that, depending on where you live. But yeah, find out who owns the house. Send them an offer. Say, hey, I want to buy this house. Write up an offer. Look online. Just go Google sample house contracts, purchase sales, and you'll find sample contracts, and put together an offer and mail it to them. What's the worst thing that can happen? They'll probably not respond. But if you find 5 or 6 of those, maybe 10 of those, there's a good chance you might get a response from at least 1 or 2 of them. And they might want too much. They might not be willing to sell. You never know until you try it, though. Another idea is approach a landlord who owns rental properties. Say you're in the market to buy a house. You're flexible with a tenant that's living inside of it. You'd like to buy the house even with the tenant. Remember, tenant comes with tenant rights, and you know that. He might make you a deal. You never know. Of course, then you got to, deal with a tenant, and they have rights. So you research that. If they're in contract, they have rights that are written in the contract and unwritten rights as well. If they're not in contract and they're month to month, they still have rights. So keep that in mind. But these are, thinking outside of the box type ideas for getting a property in a tough market to find one. Well, guys, I hope this was helpful. Let me know down in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for joining me. And if you have gotten anything useful out of this video, it really helps if you drop a like and subscribe. Of course, I should have asked that at the beginning of the video because everybody that made it this far already has. I always forget. But thank you so much for watching, guys. Remember, only you can make your financial dreams come true. Don't delay. Get started today. I will see you all in the next video. Be safe. God bless. Bye.